Today I'm revealing details of a recent military operation undertaken by Russia. And to President Putin I say, we see you, we see your activity over our cables and our pipelines, and you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will have serious consequences.
Defence Secretary, hello.
Hello.
Now, I remember last time you were on Newscast, you were in the back of your ministerial car coming back from Plymouth, and you were talking to me and Chris about a Russian ship called the Yantar that had been in British territorial waters. And here we are again.
That's true. I think it was November. And it's much better to join you in the studio. So
of course.
Glad to do that.
Yeah. So you did this surprise news conference in Downing Street on Thursday morning where you were talking about what the Russians had been doing in British waters and what Britain had done in response. So let's do the first bit first. What was actually going on? What was Vladimir Putin trying to do?
Well, you mentioned the spy ship Yantar, which I exposed before. This is part of the same secret operation that President Putin wants to operate covertly in and around our waters and those of our allies. It's part of what they call their GUGI team. It's a deep ocean research capability, and it's designed to be able to survey pipelines and cables in peacetime, but then sabotage them in conflict.
And we should be clear, these are cables that carry information around the world that the UK sends out there. This is our gas pipelines from other countries.
These are the networks on which our way of life depends. You know, half of our gas comes through pipelines under the sea. Trillions of pounds each day is part of the trade. 99% of our telecoms and our data comes through cables under the sea connected to the UK. So if an adversary like Putin holds those at risk, then they threaten the way that we live. They threaten the lifeblood of our economy as well as our security. And so what I've done today is to set out a very substantial UK Armed Forces operation alongside Norway and other allies over more than a month, which has demonstrated that we're alert to Putin's threat. Despite the Middle East commanding a lot of people's attention, we haven't taken our eye off the primary threat to the UK, which is Russian aggression and rising. And last time it was the spy ship on the surface. This time it was a combination of 3 submarines, and we tracked them 24/7 for over a month with allies to make sure that we are able to say to Putin, we see what you're doing, we're watching you. And it means also that if there is ever any damage to our cables or our pipelines, we know we can hold Putin to account. We know he can't deny it. And it also demonstrates to people, I think, that despite full focus on the Middle East, you know, armed forces 24/7 are also doing the job of protecting our homeland, and dealing with the threats that Putin poses to the wider NATO flank.
So my reading of your statement this morning was that there was one submarine sent near Britain, and that was sort of a decoy that was meant to distract you while these other 2 submarines looked at our cables to kind of scope them out. Is that right?
Well, I think first, you know, Putin would have wanted us to be distracted by the Middle East. And whilst we're defending our people, we're defending our allies in the Middle East, we're not being distracted from what he gets up to. And yes, we first saw an attack submarine, a Kula-class submarine, part of the Russian Navy, that was likely to be a decoy. But we picked up the other 2 secret submarines, part of the GUGI operation, and we tracked both the attack submarine for as long as it was in and around our waters and those of our allies until it retreated, headed back to Port North, into the Russian High North. And then we continued to track the 2 GUGI submarines so that we were able to watch them every step of the way and make clear to them they were being monitored, they were being watched, and the covert operation that Putin plans had been exposed.
But they still felt that they could hang around in our waters for a whole month.
Well, they did. But then
Because surely if they were threatened by us or impressed by our show of force, they would have done a U-turn much quicker.
Well, their purpose, remember, was a secret operation that we exposed. It was a covert operation that we watched 24/7. And a very substantial operation that demonstrated if you like, the capabilities of our own armed forces to Putin, as well as, I hope, to reassure our public. So, we had more than 500 personnel involved in this, and that was just the UK effort alone. We had 450 hours flown by our special submarine hunting aircraft. Our submarine hunting frigate sailed several thousand nautical miles. They did it in the most treacherous, extreme high north conditions. So it demonstrates, if you like, to Putin, we've got the capability to detect what he does. We've got the capability to deter and expose what he does. And if necessary, we will have the capability also to respond if indeed there's any damage to our pipelines or our cables.
And that there's no evidence of that as a result of this.
No evidence of any damage, but we with allies will make sure that is verified. And our UK undersea network is one of the most resilient around. We have a very rapid repair rate in conjunction with the sort of commercial operators. We've got pre-planned rerouting if there is any damage to any cables or pipelines. But despite having a really, if you like, resilient infrastructure in the UK, the threats are increasing. And this is a demonstration that we're on it. We're tracking those Russian threats. We've got the capability to detect them, to track them, and if necessary, we've got the capability also to respond to them, and we will.
Would you expect a Russian response to what you've done today?
Well, we'll see. I called out their spy ship Yantar back in November. I think I got a bit of abuse from the Kremlin in some of the statements from spokespeople, but we'll see. The important thing for me is that Putin planned a covert operation. We exposed it, and he cannot now deny the threat that he poses to our undersea infrastructure.
Why are you going public about this? Because I assume the Russians knew what you were doing, so the Kremlin will have got the message. Why are you laying it on this thick with the public as well?
Because I want the public to recognise that despite the all eyes on the Middle East, understandably, and this noisy, dangerous conflict that we've got out there, there are other threats that our nation faces, and that our forces are alert to those, tracking those, and dealing with those 24/7. And it's also a way of reminding people that we're rightly concerned about the Middle East. We want to see a ceasefire there. We want to see the stability returned and the lifeblood of shipping restored through the Strait of Hormuz. But the primary threat to the UK remains rising Russian aggression. That's a threat to us. It's a threat to our NATO allies. And it's why NATO is developing its deterrence, its defence, and it's now bigger, stronger, and better funded than it was before Putin invaded Ukraine.
That raises about 1 million more questions, so I'll try and cram in as many as I can in the time that we've got you. You talk about the situation in the Gulf. Did this operation have a name, by the way, or is that top secret?
No, we've just
It's just work.
we've just done it.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't have a name. That's classic journalists. We're always looking for the label. Doing this, did that prevent us doing things that, as a country, you would have liked to do in the Gulf and in the Middle East in the last month?
No, because we've got forces that are capable of doing more than one thing at once. I'm proud of what we've done in the Middle East. It was weeks before this current conflict broke out that I put extra planes, radar systems, air defence systems, and personnel into the Middle East so that we could defend British bases, British people, and British allies. We stepped that up when we've seen the scale and the indiscriminate nature of the Iranian response. And we've now got 1,000 UK personnel across the Middle East and beyond Cyprus, playing a part in defending our interests and our allies there.
So there wasn't an opportunity cost from working in British waters for what you would have done in the Middle East?
No, at one and the same time. This operation that I've exposed today ran for over a month, almost simultaneously with the current conflict in the Middle East. And I hope it's a reassurance to the British public that we've got an armed forces that are on it, that are capable of mounting what was a very substantial operation with allies. And in particular, a big tribute to Norway. We work particularly closely with Norway. And the defence minister there, the government minister there, the government share our dedication to deal and confront with the threat that Putin poses to the North Atlantic. And I remember when I was last in Norway, and I've been there 2 or 3 times now.
Right.
Before Christmas, the Norwegian defence minister hosted it. I coordinated the meeting of 10 what we call JEF allies, Nordic and Baltic countries, and we war gamed half a mile inside a Norwegian mountain. Exactly this sort of...
what, in a bunker?
Exactly, a sort of mountain bunker. It's one of the operational headquarters of the Norwegians. But we war gamed together, the 10 defence ministers, the responses that we needed to make to this type of Russian hybrid activity.
Right. And were you doing various scenarios in that war game? Like, was there an incredibly serious one? I mean, it's all serious, but I mean, a really, really dramatic one.
It's all serious. It can all have serious consequences. And the point about this is to recognise that Russia poses this rising threat, that its level of activities are increasing. So over the last 2 years, we've seen by nearly a third the increase in the number of Russian vessels encroaching on our wider waters. It's the same for other NATO allies.
Which suggests that your deterrence up until now has not been working, because the Russians keep sending more ships, which means they're not scared.
Well, it's not going to stop, but the point is that
but it's increasing.
We track it. Well, the Russian aggression is increasing, and not just the threat it poses to our undersea infrastructure. The number of incursions of Russian planes into NATO airspace, the cyber attacks that we and other nations are facing, including from Russia, is clearly on the increase. And it is why that we're working more closely with allies. It's why you had Keir Starmer about a month ago in a big speech at the Munich Security Conference said, look, hard power is the currency of the age. It's why as a government we're putting now record increases of investment into defence, because that's required to deal with the increasing demands on defence and the increasing threats that we face.
How do you describe what situation we're in with Russia now? Because some people say, oh, this is looking a little bit like we're kind of in a weird war with Russia now. How would you describe what it is?
I would say, first of all, that Putin has the capability to certainly wage hybrid warfare on us. Its Googie operation is designed to do that. As I say, to be able to map and survey our undersea infrastructure now in peacetime, but also sabotage it, damage it, destroy it in conflict. And that's one reminder of the threat that Putin poses. But the important thing for me as Defence Secretary, and it's why I work so hard on the close alliances with nations like Norway and with the US and within NATO, is that we don't defend alone, we don't deter alone, and if we're forced to fight, we won't fight alone. And that's the great strength of the NATO alliance.
Was the US involved in this operation?
Well, I'm not disclosing the details of other allies. The Norwegians,
just Norway.
The Norwegians have confirmed.
Oh, so they were happy
they're part of the operation.
Well, yeah.
They, like us, had their P-8 submarine hunting aircraft involved. They had one of their submarine hunting frigates involved. And the historical Lunar House agreement that I've signed now, the UK with Norway, which includes that biggest ever warship export deal from Britain, means that we're two nations now that will increasingly put together a combined anti-submarine force of frigates, of aircraft, of autonomous systems that will do what we've done as two nations together for decades, but reinforce our ability to defend NATO northern flank.
Sounds like a special relationship, but with Norway this time.
I regard it as special. I regard the degree of cooperation, the degree of understanding, the shared determination we have to recognise that the High North is a priority area. It's an area of greatest threat from Russia, and that with Putin increasing is Russian levels of activity and potential threat to us and our allies like Norway. We meet that best by not just rebuilding the strength of our forces as we are with the record investment, but we do so by strengthening our alliances. And so you've seen, I think, from Keir Starmer and this government over 20 months, setting out to rebuild our hard power. So last year we put 300 million more into shipbuilding in this country. We've doubled to £4 billion the amount we're putting into autonomy. You see hard power, you see the development of strong alliances and the exercise of shore diplomacy. And it's that combination that helps make Britain more secure at home, but also stronger abroad.
You say you want to strengthen alliances. Is Donald Trump weakening them?
Well, so I make a point not of commenting on his social media posts.
What, even when he threatens to end an entire civilization?
Well, that was clearly something that, as a government, we took issue with. I think the point for me is when I talk with his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, when I sit next to him at NATO, defence ministers, he's very clear, as President Trump has been with our Prime Minister, that the US remain totally committed to NATO and to Article 5, but they require, rightly in my view, but they require and are pushing us hard as European nations to do more within NATO. So to take on more of the leadership with Ukraine, which we are as the UK, and to do more to invest in defence, which we are, and we will do more as the UK, but also to do more of the, if you like, the heavy lifting within NATO to defend the North Atlantic and the wider European area. And I think this operation is a very good example of exactly that.
So you don't want to talk about Donald Trump's social media posts. I can understand that, but we could talk about something that the US administration is doing. They have sent the Vice President JD Vance to Hungary to support Viktor Orban's re-election campaign. Viktor Orban is, okay, maybe not necessarily an ally of Russia, but he's quite pro-Russia, not that enthusiastic about helping out Ukraine. Is it okay for the Vice President of our strongest ally to go and do that this week of all weeks?
Well, I mean, that's for them to explain, surely.
You can have a view on it.
Not for me to explain or get into. We'll see what the election result is in Hungary. Hungary does remain an important NATO member. And my focus as Defence Minister for the UK is to make sure that we play our leading part, as other nations want us to do, in building up the European strength of NATO, responding to the challenge from the US to do more. I think we've demonstrated that by exposing not just the nature of Putin's covert operation, but by setting out the detail of how substantial our armed forces with allies has been in order to deal with those threats.
Is there a world where in the very near future, British military personnel are helping to keep the Strait of Hormuz open? And I mean, but keeping it open by being there, doing stuff.
First and foremost, we need the ceasefire to hold. We want it sort of strengthened so that it becomes a long-term peace. And that, in the end, will be the best circumstances in which the opening of the Strait of Hormuz takes place, because fundamentally it's about the confidence of commercial ship owners, crews, insurers, that their ships can have safe passage. What I think is a useful contribution to building an international, multinational understanding about the circumstances necessary and the potential options for helping make that happen, a useful contribution is a sort of conference that our Foreign Secretary convened last week with around 40 nations, that our military headquarters convened this week, and also the sort of discussions the Prime Minister is having at the moment with Gulf countries in the Middle East, talking about the importance of the Strait of Hormuz being open to shipping without tolls, and the importance of this fledgling ceasefire which we hope will be reinforced by the Vice President's discussions and negotiations over the weekend.
Because to me, that all sounds like Britain is putting a lot of effort into the diplomacy, and actually you're not really thinking about a military component of that.
We've been discussing and looking at the development of military options with other nations, but fundamentally this needs to be diplomatically led. Fundamentally, it needs to be in the context of a ceasefire that holds, and that it's in the context also of a stability that's restored to the wider region.
And is your understanding of the ceasefire that was agreed between the Iranians and the US that Lebanon was included in that, and Israeli attacks on Hezbollah were meant to be incorporated into the ceasefire?
The best thing I can go on is the public statements, but I would say to you,
what, you don't have more to go on than what has been said in public?
If we want stability, if we want a settled Middle East, then Lebanon has to be included in the ceasefire. We want to see it included in the ceasefire. We condemn the escalation of the conflict in Lebanon at the moment, and we will look to the further negotiations which are set to take place over this weekend, and I'd want to see that ceasefire extended to include Israel and Lebanon.
People might be a little bit concerned that you have to go off the public statements of the US and Iran, and that you don't have sort of your own intel or your own information from the Americans about what's going on. Are you just being sort of reticent to like spill the beans, or is it that we don't know?
Well, we're having a public discussion.
Right.
Which is why I'm referring to the public statements.
Oh, so if we were in the pub privately, maybe you'd say a bit more.
In the pub privately? Oh, well, you'll have to try me. You'll have to try me in the pub. You'll have to try me in the pub sometime.
And we're recording this at 1:30, so it's far too early. Okay, I see your point. Just on the UK contribution to security in the Gulf, can we talk about HMS Dragon? Are you happy with how the whole HMS Dragon thing played out? I'm just thinking about the fact that the Prime Minister announced it was going, and then it was quite a long time before it actually left port. Then it took ages to get there. That's geography. You can't do anything about that. And now it looks like it's already being recalled back to port for repairs. I mean, are you happy with that as kind of the storyline around HMS Dragon in the last month?
Well, first of all, I'm really proud of what our forces are doing.
Of course.
Out in the Middle East.
Yeah, they're in harm's way. Yeah, of course.
Dragon is a part of that. But remember, weeks before this current conflict erupted, I put in extra jets, radar systems, air defence systems, electronic war systems into the Middle East to reinforce our defences. So we have, from day one, been able to fly defensive missions to protect British people, our bases and our allies out there. And as we've seen then the nature and extent of the widespread retaliation from Iran, then we've stepped up and altered what we've done, and Dragon was a part of that. And if you look at the speed in which the Navy and the civilians did 6 weeks' work in 6 days to get Dragon out of port, and if you look at the way that destroyers like Dragon generally have to go in regularly for routine maintenance, which is what's happening now. They'll go in for the regular maintenance, they'll upgrade their systems, that's happening now, and they'll fix minor faults, and that's happening now. And
it's just a fact of life.
It's a fact of life. You can't run aircraft, submarines, military aircraft. You can't run military personnel 24/7 indefinitely. And that's just part of the way that you have to sort of.
I suppose if you have more of all those things, then you've got more resilience. But as you said, you are investing.
Yeah, look, nobody can deny. You know, we've had 14 years in which our forces, including the Navy, have been hollowed out and underfunded. We don't turn that round overnight. You know, the fact that under the last 14 years, the number of warships were cut, the number of mine hunters were cut, the renewal of our nuclear deterrent was delayed. But we are putting more into British shipbuilding now, 300 million more last year. We're now doubling the amount of investment we're putting into autonomy to £4 billion. So we are turning that down. We are rebuilding it. But when it takes 6 years to build a warship, you can see that won't happen
Yeah,
overnight.
you can't click your fingers. Just two very quick questions because you've got to go back to your day job. Are we sending one of our aircraft carriers to the US to mark the 4th of July, as has been speculated?
Well, what the Prime Minister's said, I've said as well, is that we will deploy our military where the threats are greatest, and at the moment our priority is in the high north. This operation I exposed today has demonstrated that, and we've announced, and he announced back actually in his Munich Security Conference speech, that we would be sending the Prince of Wales UK carrier as NATO's flagship, leading a NATO high north deployment. We'd be sending it to the high north and help patrol that northern reaches of the Atlantic. And it's also why we're playing the lead role now also in NATO's new Mission Arctic Century. We're recognising the threats in the high north, recognising the role and responsibility the UK can play in leading the sort of operations to protect our northern flank.
And last question, totally different note, totally different tone. There was a big profile of you in the New Statesman a couple of weeks ago, and I very much enjoyed reading it while I was on holiday. The most startling fact in that was that you carry a bottle of HP sauce with you everywhere. Is that true?
Is that the most startling?
Well, I mean, there was lots of other interesting things in there, but...
Well, look, it is true. I've always done it. I guess, as the politician's answer would be, I'm an MP, so I carry HP sauce. But actually, the hard truth of it is, I love HP sauce.
Yeah.
And these days, you too often get a brown sauce substitute.
Yeah.
You want
the real deal.
You got to take your own.
I'm just wondering, how do you get around the 100 mil liquids thing in airports? Suppose you have your own plane, don't you?
No, well, not always. No, but I have had it confiscated.
By whom?
By airport security.
Okay.
In which case, I just get another one.
Yes. Anyway, that is a very different from the rest of the subjects that we've been discussing today. Thank you very much, and come back next time you want to update us about the safety of the world.
Thank you.
So that was my conversation with John Healey, the Defence Secretary. Here are my three main takeaways. Number one, Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin know all of this already. So him going public today is aimed at you. It's so that you know about it. Number two, did you notice that whenever he talked about the UK's relationship with Norway, he was absolutely glowing? And then when he talked about the UK's relationship with the United States, he was much more vague and certainly not glowing. So I will let you make up your own mind about what that might reveal about the state of the special relationship. And thirdly, he was absolutely adamant that the UK's response to the situation in the Gulf between the US and Iran was not hobbled in any way by this big operation that the UK was mounting to shadow these 3 Russian submarines. He wanted to be very, very clear about that. And that's all for this episode of Newscast. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back with another episode of Election Cast very soon. Bye-bye.